As more and more people joined the party, you didn't have to be the brightest of journalists to realise the potential for a story.
When you had this initial coverage, it was mildly positive, and it's seen as another sort of tame and rather silly youth cult. Smiley t-shirts for sale.
And we're holding on with the Acid House smiley face t-shirts.
But then there was this sudden realisation, oh no, what have we done? We're advertising a drug cult. Immediately they pulled these t-shirts off sale and started running these heavy-duty editorials about the evils of pushers targeting our pop kids.
Media pressure meant that the police had to be seen to be doing something.
Our policy has been to stop these parties because they're unlicensed and because of our concerns for public order and indeed public safety.
By this time we were turning out 250 plus police officers on a Saturday night, and we'd started using helicopters for spotting. But every time I stepped up a tactic, they would step up a tactic against me.
My boyfriend at the time was a printer, getting to print off a load of, moody flyers like, drugs tonight, with a big smiley face, South London, all meet in Croydon or whatever. And then we get one of our friends' mums to go into the police station and say, oh, I found this in my son's bedroom, I think it's for an illegal rave. So the acid squad and Ken Tassenden all go down to South London. Meanwhile, we're going up the M1 on our way to Buckinghamshire.
We then started to do what Sunrise did. We got our own radio station and we started to relay messages, sending people all over the place. Again, it went wrong. We sent them to Colchester one night where they smashed 2 garages up on the way and looted them completely.
Police and local authorities have clashed with partygoers over noise and traffic nuisance, sustaining injuries and making many arrests.
At a certain point, you had this kind of really heavy sort of police involvement because, there was stuff in all the tabloids and there was a huge reaction. Do you remember at what point that kind of all changed and became really kind of a huge thing?
At the time, the whole issue of pay parties was a much more grey area legally. Subsequently, there were a number of, I would call them draconian bits of legislation brought in to counteract pay parties. But because it was a grey area, the bigger promoters realised that the thing to do was to have an on-site lawyer. So you'd have these kind of heated debates about the legality of these events between the on-site lawyer and a very senior policeman. And it was literally down to the wire whether the event would take place, dependent on the ability of the lawyer to persuade the policeman that, yes, this did fall within the confines of the law.
The minute we touched their equipment, they would lay a counterclaim for damage to equipment or for harassment, whatever you like to think of, they came at us with. I was taking out every agency I could find. And of course, these organisers feared the Batman more than they feared us, to be honest with you. There's no doubt that the powers weren't good enough for the police really to do the job effectively.
Well, it was a game of cat and mouse, and we always won. Sorry, Ken Tassenden, but we got you.
I can't go along with the fact that they won. I'll be prepared to call it nearly a draw. But I think we won because we stopped it all in 18 months. All right, we drove it underground and we drove it to warehouses and the violence increased, the problems increased.
In 1990, the government introduced a law which made it illegal to hold raves in fields around the M25 without a proper licence. But the promoters would not give up. Many returned to the cities to find alternative locations.
The innovation that was made here was to start using unconventional premises like abandoned buildings, these sort of relics of Thatcher's destruction of the British manufacturing industry were taken up by a new generation who gave them new meaning.
Genesis was just basically about doing different events in different locations. We'd break into a warehouse, 100,000 square foot, move sound and lights into there. I'd put a suit on and I'd basically go out to the police and tell them that I was George Michael's personal manager or whoever came into my mind at that time. In those days, the promoters were God. You know, we were earning, you know, hundreds of thousands of pounds. But, you know, we were young. We were like 21 years old. And it went as fast as we earned it. We were buying the Porsches and the Mercedes and the 30-grand watches. So, yeah, on Saturday, we'd have 150 large. But by Wednesday, it'd been spent.
This dance culture, people involved in that really are Thatcher's children. That's what we are. So it was shaped by Thatcher's ideas of entrepreneurial, go-getting, go-for-it type of culture, but people involved reinterpreted those ideas to suit themselves. They were going to be entrepreneurs, but it may not be on the right side of the law.
Even though the intelligence office has only been running a few months, we've got some very firm evidence about major criminals involved, major criminal organizations, drugs, protection rackets, all at the background of these parties.
I think the thing about drugs is, as well as ecstasy being very enjoyable, it's also illegal. And one of the things about the huge rise in the number of drugs consumed in this country over that period is there's also been enormous amounts of money put into the hands of really deeply unpleasant people.
To me, drugs were an easy way out. They were such an easy way out of a bad situation. The bad situation was there was nothing. No one was offering me a job. No one's offering me love. No one's offering me nothing. If you answer the phone and you get 50 quid, ain't that a good phone call? That is a fucking brilliant phone call. Getting 50 quid for going, hello? Yeah, right, I'll see you in 10 minutes. To me, that is a way of life, which is brilliant. All of a sudden, I was in the limelight. I was the man to be. You got my phone number? You know the right man.
The hello mate, where you from, you know, all that, the matey bit that started to go with the rougher element of it, so to speak. I mean, you know, there was obviously a lot of money to be made in the mass selling of ecstasies that brought in elements of people that you used to go clubbing to get away from.
And you were going to these venues and there were like security guards with like Rottweilers
and Rottweilers, and it wasn't that happy, loved up vibe all of a sudden, it was a heavy vibe.
I can remember going to, you know, some of the big raves, and as you were walking in, you know, you had people coming up saying, trips, ease.
Yeah, ease, trips, Charlie. Ease, trips, Charlie.
I mean, everywhere you went, people were offering you stuff. I mean, and in the early days of SLS, it was a little bit more, you know, it wasn't so in your face. Yeah, it was a bit more secretive.
Exactly. I mean, what you found was, when you go out for a night out, you don't want somebody offering you stuff. You want to be able to find it if you want it. You want to be able to ask and be able to get it. That was the I don't know, the etiquette of it was you wanted it there if you wanted it. The last thing you wanted was a corridor full of people driving you mad offering you stuff.
It was quite well organised. You know, there'd be meetings during the week where rival dealers, instead of going round another dealer's house and wrecking him and putting him out of business, they'd approach the doorman and they'd say, how much rent is he paying you to sell drugs in your club? And if they say £1,000, they say, well, we'll give you 1,500. For a return on that sort of rent, dealers in London I know might make £8,000 a weekend, which is a lot of dough, do you know what I mean?
You've got me selling 10s and the 20s in single pills. Then you've got Mr. Next Man Up who's selling the 100 pills to people like me. But then you've got the man who's sitting there saying, well, I'm earning 200 grand a night and I'm doing absolutely jack shit for nothing. My boys are earning me my money.
We'd seen this whole culture develop and all this positivity, and it was so depressing when other elements started infiltrating it. There was nothing we could do because we weren't the kind of people who were going to do battle with them, and it got very nasty in Manchester.
If you know that someone's got £50,000 in their pocket, you haven't got to go and rob a bank. You've only got to hide behind a bush with a shotgun and you've got them. And of course you had organisers, good organisers, nice people, breaking the law, but I could cope with that, who were frightened of that type of violence.
What I thought had happened was the chair had been thrown off the balcony and landed near me because I heard a bang, and as I was dancing I just saw loads and loads of faces running past me screaming, and what was actually happening was people being shot, you know, and it was the gunshots and gangland in the Hacienda.
It all went downhill really quickly, you know, until the club was closed because there's guns all over the place.
Go, let's go, go, go! Yeah, that door open.
The Acid House unit finally caught up with the party organisers and heavy sentences were imposed.
It's a warning to the others who are still organising paid Acid House parties that they get caught, they're going to get 10 years plus.
Ecstasy tablets, and this has just been picked up off the floor.
Well, there's Drug taking became normalised, became an ordinary Saturday night activity. Criminality was effectively democratised. We all became criminals. But I think it really created a feeling of disrespect for the law, the feeling, in a classic cliche, the law is an ass.
In 1994, a second piece of legislation was introduced, the Criminal Justice Bill. Acid house ravers were being lumped together with hunt saboteurs,
You want another go?
squatters and New Age travellers, as the government tried to deal with all the undesirables at the same time. The result was the first opposition culture since the anti-nuclear demonstrations of the early 80s.
Just felt this whole kind of shift in people's kind of culture and their consciousness. This whole idea about money being the kingpin was kind of being broken down, and events like that just helped push that consciousness along. I think also you had a lot of kind of single politics come out of it. I think a lot of kids kind of got into the environment, you know, protecting the environment.
Good morning, Clovis. What are the conditions like down there? Down there, hello? Yeah. Not bad.
Was ecstasy the full reason for that? Who knows? But I mean, it certainly did a lot to make them far more open to things that they wouldn't be before.
The Criminal Justice Act didn't have any effect whatsoever on mainstream clubbing. By then, they'd already granted all-night licences to clubs like the Ministry of Sound, and there's no need to go riding out into the countryside, pay 25 quid for something that may or may not happen, may end up in you being chased by the police all night, may end up with you getting rained on in a field, if you could actually go into a really nice club in the centre of your city and do the same thing.
I think we took the sort of those people that didn't quite want to stand in a muddy field on a rainy Saturday. They didn't want their coat thrown on the floor. They didn't want to sit on that sort of rave slush that you used to always get on the floors. I don't know where it came from. But they wanted to come somewhere where they knew it was a sort of safe, well-managed environment. I sort of like to think that Ministry of Sound was a sort of civilised raving. You know, we get letters from people that say it was really good not to be approached at every dark corner by the same bloke 6 weeks running offering me ecstasy and checking other people's £20 notes in the light to see if they were real.
While the super clubs were cleaning up, the high street clubs were about to experience a tragedy that would shock the nation.
I was the head doorman at Crackdowns in Basildon, and a girl called Leah Betts used to come in the club, and through a network of friends she'd been supplied ecstasy from our club for her 18th birthday party.
An Essex teenager is in a coma after taking it. Leah Betts from Latchington near Malden collapsed at her 18th birthday party.
After she'd taken the pill, she collapsed. She was in a coma. The parents were sitting by the bedside. They issued this photo to the press of this young English rose, this flower of Middle England, daughter of a copper, lying in a coma, having taken the illegal drug. And that hysteria really mounted over that week. What's going to happen to her? Are they going to switch the life support off? It was as if the police, newspaper editors, the public had suddenly discovered this invisible world. What they thought was weird, freaky druggies was actually their own kids.
I think the effect her death had was that every parent in the country thought, God, that could have been my child. And I think for the first time, kind of Middle England, mainstream Britain, realised kind of like how widely these drugs were consumed. And I think one of the things about the kind of unfolding story of Leah was, like, you remembered seeing her dad go, we will get this evil pusher.
I've got love for my daughter. I've got anger for the people with the drugs. And I hate this bastard that supplied them.
And the pushers turned out not to be evil at all, but a chain of her best friends, none of whom were making money, just passing pills along as favours, which is actually what drug dealers are in this country on the lower level. It's all friends helping out friends, and we would achieve nothing by putting these people in prison for 10 years. And I think that was the first time kind of mainstream Britain understood that.
To me, it was the strongest case for kind of putting drugs into a legal framework so that
People had some quality control, they knew what they were taking. If you were buying alcohol, you want to go to an off-licence to buy it, you wouldn't want somebody distilling it in their garden shed. This is what you've got with the drugs culture. Because it's illegal, it's underground, you don't know where it's coming from.
I mean, do you think drugs should be legalised?
I think there's a strong case now for putting them in a completely different legal framework and making sure that people have got safe drugs, because you're not going to stop people taking them now. It's in the culture, it's ingrained in there. So I think that's got to be accepted.
Everyone's shit scared of selling that pill that kills someone. But at the end of the day, if you're willing to hand over a tenner, to give me a tenner for something that you're willing to take yourself, sorry, sod's law, isn't it? It is an occupational hazard. If you take that, if you're willing to buy it, you're willing to eat it. If you ain't willing to eat it, don't buy it.
The thing about the Lear bets, it was a tragedy, but I don't really think it had that much effect on how much ecstasy people took. In fact, I think more people take ecstasy now than they did in 1988. I would say probably 100 times more. It's become the currency of clubland.
Witness to the changing face of clubland is another 80s pop star turned DJ, superstar DJ in fact, Jeremy Healy.
In terms of kind of like the whole drug culture thing, every weekend there are kids dancing their heads off, popping E's, not worried no matter how much bad press they read, no matter how many scares there are, going out and just going for it and really enjoying themselves. And do you think sort of drug use is much more widespread now than it was, say, 15 years ago?
Yeah, it's much more commonplace, and that's just the way it is, and I don't think there's anything anyone can do to change that. I just think that it is a part of everyday life and has been demonised and needs to be dealt with, in an adult way. It's a bit like sex. You can't sort of push it underneath the carpet and pretend that it doesn't go on. And to be honest with you, the number of people who've died from it and the column inches surrounding it do not equate. I know literally 20 people who've died from lung cancer from cigarettes. So I find it offensive to say that ecstasy is dangerous when they sell cigarettes around the corner,
If I were to look back over the last 11 years since the alleged craze was really in its development stages to what it is today, I wonder really whether the amount of time, resources, money that has been ploughed into this has been all worth it. I know there have been deaths. One death is one too many. But I don't think there's been more deaths through Class A drugs than there has through some of the other things that we are encountering in our day's life today.